Let me ask you something,
Yeah.
Lisa. How many times have you been listening to pitches? And how many times those pitches, or what percentage of those pitches went up the food chain?
I would say through my career, I've probably heard so far about 500, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot. The percentage is probably about 3%.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
3 out of 100. 3 out of 100.
Oh yeah, easily
pretty
3 out of
small.
1. I mean, yeah, easily. I mean, it's a very small percentage because of many things.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us again in this podcast brought to you by NOUVA. We are trying to find very interesting characters. This is a very good proof of that. We have Lisa O'Brien here with us. She is a producer and development consultant specializing in children's media. She has more than 25 years of experience creating TV and digital content for preschool through teen audiences, and has worked across formats including 2D, CG, and stop motion animation, live action scripted and unscripted. So, Lisa, I bet you have a lot to tell us today. Please talk to us about the power of storytelling.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this. I think it's wonderful to encourage other people to follow their dreams and tell their stories. And now more than ever, I think it is it's an important part of being human to share and connect with others through the power of storytelling. And so, yeah, I mean, my story is basically I have always wanted to work with kids ever since I was little. I came from a long line of teachers. And so I think that I just always had it in me to want to work with kids, to empower kids, to entertain kids. And so I thought again I was going to be a teacher, and then I had a wonderful teacher in high school, and it was a class in media communications, and I kind of had an aha moment where I realized that maybe I could combine my love for wanting to teach kids with the power of media and work in, at first I thought educational television, which I have done some, and funnily enough right now I'm back to doing a couple projects that take me back to my roots of educational storytelling. But I just decided, hey, if I could do this, this would be a dream come true. And I went to school in Canada and I got a broadcasting degree, and then I set off to make my dreams come true. And I have to say that, the odds were against me in a lot of ways, not just against me, but just against what children's television really wasn't a thing in Canada when I started and wanted to do what I ended up doing and what I'm continuing to do. But I just had a vision and I had something in my heart that I had to follow. And so nothing would really stop me. I just kept going and going. So I guess, the very first thing that I'd like to say to people listening is that, if you have that dream and you have that vision and you have that passion for wanting to, share, a story or stories or content or what you have in, in your imagination with others, just to not give up no matter what. Just know that, you have the ability to make any kind of dream come true. I think we forget that we have a very special power within us. And some people call it creative visualization and other people call it tenacity. I think it's a little bit of everything. But I think if you have that vision inside yourself, then there's a reason for it to be there. And I think you need to do what you can to express it to the world. So
wow.
Worked in children's television for 30 years. And I feel like it's been nothing but, I'm not going to say all joy. There have been struggles, there have been difficulties, there have been challenges, but I think that at the end of the day, if you can do what you love to do for a living, then you've won the lottery.
Great. So you're not in Canada right now? Where are
No,
you?
I'm not. I am Canadian. My husband's a composer in film and television, and we met when I hired him to write music for a project that I did many years ago, a self-esteem body image video for the schools, and it sold to a Canadian broadcaster called YTV, and I hired
So,
him.
excuse me, was it something like you want to keep if you want to keep your contract, you have to marry me? Something like that.
I always say he really scored. I hired him to score, and he really scored. No, no, I met him, in a working relationship, and then he told me he wanted to move to Los Angeles, and this is where we ended up. So we've been here for 27 years, and in that time, I've been very lucky. I've worked for a lot of the big companies. I've worked for Disney and NBC Universal Kids, and I helped to creatively build a channel called Sprout for preschoolers. And I've worked at the Jim Henson Company, and I've worked at Fox Kids, and so a lot of the big broadcasting companies that I know everything's kind of moving towards streaming now, but at the time, a lot of these companies had a mandate to fulfill in terms of kids blocks and kids content, and so I was lucky enough to be around and help out. And the last job that I did with the corporation was with Warner Brothers,
Wow.
now Warner Brothers Discovery, and I helped to work with the team there to build their slate of preschool programming for a block called Cartonito. So it's been fun.
It's been a long career.
Yes, it absolutely has. It's been jam packed, and what I love about the kids business is it may not be as lucrative as some of the other. I mean, some people do win the jackpot. There are some shows that break out, Barney being one of them. There are some shows that break out and become like a huge, massive hit. But for the most part, people that are working in children's television are doing it because they really want to entertain, educate, stimulate kids, and so it's a nice business to be in because of that.
So Lisa, in regards to kids, and now we're talking about the children content, what type of content are children consuming nowadays, like right now, that can be a great guide for future animated shows?
Yeah, well, I think that I think animation will always be around. I think it is. I mean, it was the one. It's pretty hardy because during COVID, it was the one business that just kept on going because a lot of animation companies figured out ways to do the work from home, which is amazing because the infrastructure itself of trying to figure out how to take all of your animators and all of your all of the equipment and the pipelines and all the organization that goes into making an animated show, and figure out how to streamline that so that so that animators and creators could all do it from various places from home was amazing. So it didn't slow down. If anything, I think it sped up a little bit doing animated shows. So I do think that animation is always going to be popular, whether it's for preschool or older kids. Usually preschool shows are shorter in format. They're usually anywhere from, 5 to 11 minutes. Whereas a lot of older kids shows are more like a 22-minute, format. But a lot of that is changing now with the love that kids are having towards going, on YouTube, particularly younger kids, with the success of brands like Coco Melon, where there's short shows that kids can sort of stream and watch several at a time. I don't think that there's any one format anymore, as far as like what kids gravitate towards, but I do think that something that is interesting is that a lot of kids do consume their media through like YouTube, through digital formats, which is nice because it's kind of open to everyone. There isn't, but I think what's really interesting right now is that there seems to be a trend towards, instead of those short little bits, packaging them now, almost going back to the linear form of storytelling, and packaging them. Maybe if they're, for instance, little short songs, packaging them in a format so that there's a story that's wrapped around that kids can enjoy, so they can kind of have a bit of both. I think that good storytelling will always break out for kids. I think that characters that are lovable and truly understanding the audience, because a lot of times, especially when my, in my career, when I was buying shows and I was in more of an executive function, a lot of times people would come in and they'd pitch ideas for shows and they wouldn't really know what the age range was. They would say, "Oh, it's for kids." But the thing about kids is that they grow so quickly. So a show that is perfect for a 2 to 4-year-old, early preschool, wouldn't be appropriate necessarily for a 4 to 6-year-old. So if you're, just in the preschool genre alone, you've got sort of really 2 age groups, maybe even 3, if you want to start to entertain them at, when they're still babies. And you do see that. You see a lot of times, kids, little ones, really little ones watching screens. Those are obviously, for the most part, nonverbal, very musically led. Whereas, early preschool, very simple story, simple characters, bright colors. I'm going back to, Coco Melon being such a success, that you're easily captivated by it. Songs that kids know at that age, not complicated storylines. And then when they start to get into the more 4 to 6, you can get into more complex storytelling. You can get into multi-layered genres. For instance, something like a Blue's Clues, which is such a brilliant show, where kids can kind of play along and really feel like they're part of it. You can introduce more complexity in the storytelling, more characters, more of an arc, maybe even an A-B story. A lot of times an A-B story, which means you've got your main story that you're telling, and then you've got sort of an underlying B story from a character that may not be the main story that you're telling. And I think that's really good to know, because they, kids grow and they become much more,
demanding of different content, right?
Exactly. They want more conflict and they want a bigger hook.
More drama.
So yeah, there's a couple of different ways that you can.
What about the ages of 7 through 10, 7 through 9?
So once you start to get into that age range, you're really looking at kids they love silliness. They love quirkiness. They like to have, especially the boys, they like to have a lot of action. They can really kind of grasp and understand a lot more complexity and nuances in the characters. They want more of a hook. They want to know kind of right off the top, like, all storytelling really is like a hero overcoming an obstacle.
Exactly.
And so at that age, you can have like a little bit more of a complicated, nuanced hero, someone who may not be perfectly perfect. It may not be clear at first that they are heroes because they are going through a challenge. So you can show a little bit more of the qualities that go into.
It seems like, it's incredible to have someone that was on the other side of the bench. You were actually looking at hearing pitches, taking your time to decide which story, which promoter, which creative person, which people would you choose, in order to fulfill the needs of the company. And the company, of course, might be just making a very precise overview of the market in order to, be successful. Yes. So why don't you tell us, give us your take on Bibles? What's a Bible in a TV series, and what's a successful winning Bible?
So what typically happens, and again, this is my experience in the kids realm. It may not be everybody's experience who's buying or hearing pitches, but in the kids realm, what happens is that you attend markets and you go to these various functions and you share, usually to a lot of people, you sort of share, maybe you're on a conference, panel, you share what you're looking for from a brand perspective for your particular channel or streaming service. you kind of share, oh, we really need shows that are from, 2 to 3 or 2 to 4, and we're looking for animated shows with a strong boy lead. Or okay, we're really looking for shows that are unscripted. We want to do reality-based game shows or reality-based shows for 6 to 10, 6 to 9. So you usually, just from being in meetings, I always say everybody that's at the level even of buying has many, many, many layers ahead on top of them that they have to actually sell to. So it's very important for the person that is that you're pitching to, for them to be able to grasp exactly what it is that you're selling, and meaning the concept, because they will internally, if they like it, or that they feel like, after being in meetings and knowing what's missing and what they want to fill in their block of programming, they have to be able to very comfortably and confidently pitch it up. I would say up the food chain. So what usually happens is that many times it's agents and managers will contact you and say, hey, my client has a series, and it's a game show series for 6 to 9-year-olds. Are you still interested in that genre? And are you available to take the pitch? So that usually is like just to lead up to, and I will answer the question about the Bible, but that comes a little bit later. But it usually starts with what's called a pitch. And so sometimes when you're really super busy, you might say, yeah, I'll listen to it, I'll hear it, but maybe you'll just do like a very quick, 15-minute. Give me the top line, tell me what it is, who's involved, and if I'm interested, I will take it to the next step. And a lot of times for me, before COVID and after COVID, was, come into the office and let's have usually an hour-long meeting. And so what happens in that hour-long meeting is, there's chit chat first. And this is the advice that I give to people that are going in for a pitch. There's usually a little bit of chit chat. How are you doing and what's going on? And then you're like, so what's your idea? And so what I always recommend is that the pitch be, and sometimes it means you have to work it, practice it with other people, really understand it, because what you have in your head and your imagination may not be super clear, even though you feel it is, because it's in your mind. So it's really good to practice your pitch many, many, many times. And it doesn't seem to change that, what they call that elevator pitch. I do think it's still really an effective way to start a pitch, so that you're what we call setting the table, or what my boss in the past used to say, setting the table. So right away you get an idea. You say, okay, this is a show for 6 to 9-year-olds, and it's about 3 aliens that crash land. And I'm actually giving you a pitch for something that one of my favorite shows that we worked on called Flugels. They crash land in the backyard of humans, in a rocket ship. A child comes, hangs it up in the bedroom, and then these 3 aliens come down and they investigate how the humans live, and they try and figure out what different things are. So it's a lot of comedy. There's a little bit of science there as they try and figure out, like, what's an ice cube, or what's a popcorn maker, or what's a whatever. And the humans can't see them. But you see it all from their perspective. So there's comedy, there's action, there's a little bit of science. And so you right away, you go, oh, okay, I'm getting it. And then you can proceed to kind of go into, here are the characters, here's the setting, here is a basic arc line, and you just give a snapshot, enough to whet the appetite of whoever it is that you're selling, so that you go, okay, I'm very clear on what that is. And then many times you either send, certainly when you're at a conference, if you're doing this pitch, like some people get meetings at these conferences, a lot of times it's best to say, I'll send you the materials later, because if there used to be the day that I would carry around just a whole bag load of stuff, and that's just too much. So it's best just to say, if it's a conference, here's a one sheet, or here's my information, or here's a little like key thing, and you can just put it in afterwards. Or I'm going to follow up with more information. And if you're in the room pitching, it's always great to sort of say, okay, well, would you like to see other materials? And a lot of times if the executive is interested, they'll say, yes, can you send me what you have? And at that point, it's really great if you have a little bit more than just the pitch that you pitched. And that gets into the Bible. So the Bible is really when you start to break down the show and a lot of detail. So when you go in for the pitch, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to do the pitch and then I'll figure out the Bible. What's awesome is if you've got the world pretty well figured out with room to grow and evolve, obviously. And then you condense it into a pitch. Because if you try doing it the other way, what might happen is that the executive might start asking you questions. Oh, I really like this. So how do you see an episode working? And you're like, oh, I didn't really think of that. I just thought of like 3 pages of just like, but I haven't really thought it through. And that's a bit of a tangle because what you want to be able to do is have like more to share so that when the executive hopefully says, yeah, I really like this idea. It seems like it's like for boys and that's what we're looking for. And it's animated and it's fun characters and it's got like what I call spinach in the brownies, which there's some scientific stuff there, but it's funny. So yeah, can you send me, can you send me more information? I'd love to see how an episode would work. Can you send me some synopses of how an episode would work? Can you just tell me a little bit more about how these characters interact with each other, what their relationship is with each other? And if you've got an executive interested, you really want to, in the next day or two, be able to send that to them. So yes, it does start with a pitch, but it's really good to have a Bible or even what we call a mini Bible, which is...
So your pitch is like the gatekeeper, and you have to work on your pitch really well.
Yeah.
Be very confident,
yes.
Give little details, and give them the taste and make them eager to hear more and see more. That's what you're saying. Now, why, Lisa, why don't you tell us about some numbers? For example, someone in Latin America, which is, many people will be watching this. Maybe someone has a very good idea and they figure out a way to put a pitch together and put a Bible together. Okay. So in real terms, I have 2 questions. One is you mentioned a lot about boys.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like the children's stories, there's a tendency to have boys and girls, but you have to have the boy in the story. That's one question. Is that true?
It's a great question. And I think it's an age-old debate in kids television as to whether or not boys will watch something that has a girl lead or girls will watch something that has a boy lead. I think times have changed. I think things are a lot more, in many ways, in all ways, fluid. And so I do think that, look at the success of Barbie right now. It's $1 billion success story, and it's only been out for a couple of weeks. That's a great example of a show that, I talked to my mom this morning, and it was funny because she said, oh, it must be a success because mothers are taking their daughters. And I'm like, yeah. And I think dads are going to be taking their sons. And I think because it's a great story, it's really well told. It has something for everybody. And yes, Barbie is female-led, and the Barbie dolls were female-led at one point, but they've managed to create a story that feels very humanistic, not, it really is about like, you're enough as you are, and celebrate being you, and celebrate, all that you have to offer, whether you're boy, girl, in between, doesn't matter. So I think that is changing. When I first started in the business, it was very much like, oh, you need to go to the, toy store and look at the boys' toys and the girls' toys. Never the two shall meet. And if you've got something that's going to be a success, you can't have both. You can't have a show that appeals to both boys and girls. I think that's changed quite a bit. Okay. But I would say that you need to be clear when you go in who your main character is. And that doesn't mean that's who the audience is going to be, but you have to be very clear to, this is a series that has 3 leads, or this is a series that has a family at the lead, like the series Bluey, that is such a massive success, is a massive success because the creator has kids, knows families, has a wonderful sense of humor, knows what it's like to try and be a dad and be like, everything to the kids, and always kind of, messes up like most parents feel like they do, but still just wants to play and give love. It's a very clear agenda of what he was going after. If you ask me, what was the series Bluey about in one word, you go, play. So the more that you can be clear, like you can go in and say, this series is about curiosity, especially for younger kids. This series is about curiosity. It's so helpful for the person hearing it to get a good grasp on what they're going to expect when they see more material. So,
Okay, great.
That's
Excellent. So
yeah.
let me ask you something,
Yeah.
Lisa. How many times have you been listening to pitches? And how many times those pitches, or what percentage of those pitches went up the food chain?
I would say through my career, I've probably heard so far about 500, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, when I used to go to the markets, and I'm sure other people who go to the markets now can testify. Like if you go to a kid's screen and get, for example, my meetings would start usually at 7 a.m. and end about 10 p.m. at night.
Wow.
And other than meals, which were a little longer, an hour and a half, a lot of times the meetings were a half hour each. So they would be very, very quick. And then I would always participate in something called 15-minute pitches, where they literally had 15 minutes to pit, and so that would be, I think it would be 2 hours of 15-minute pitches. So those are really fast, and different people coming in, you'd sit at one table and everybody would come in for 15 minutes and be able to give their pitch. Truth be told, I always felt, because a lot of times those people that would pitch in those 15-minute pitches, it was their first pitch. Truth be told, I would just get to know them a little bit, and then I would schedule time afterwards, even though I wasn't supposed to, probably, because I just felt like it's just really hard to pitch something when you're new, to the business in 15 minutes. I mean, that's just,
it's a challenge. It's a challenge. You got to be ready. Yeah, 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
Very short period of time.
Very, very short. If you're super experienced, they always laugh. They always talk about things like, there's all kinds of tales in Hollywood about like Rugrats being drawn on a napkin, and right away the buyer going, "Oh, I get it," because it was just a quick sketch of kids in diapers from their perspective, and that's Rugrats. So it was like, "Oh, I get it. Yes, I love this." But most of the time, you have to have a more thorough pitch. The percentage is probably about 3%.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
3 out of 100. 3 out of 100.
Oh yeah, easily 3 out of 1. I mean, easily. I mean, it's a very small percentage because of many things. I say that, but then I don't want to discourage anybody, because, miracles happen and you can't give up. And there were many times that people would pitch to me and they would pitch other idea, constantly come back. And it was maybe the fourth or fifth pitch that I'd be like, I think this is going to work. And then we, would move it up the food chain. But from pitch to actually meetings and developing it and getting it into a place where it was ready to pitch to other levels of executives, you could get even 70% of the executives buying into it, but maybe someone at the very tippity top is like, I don't get it, I don't see it, or it doesn't work for me. So it's very challenging, both as a creator, yes, absolutely, but a creator has to also understand that who they're pitching to has many masters to serve, and so it takes a long time to sort of roll that ball up the hill and get it to a place. And usually they get it to a place where it goes into development. And then development is a process that can last anywhere from 6 months to years. But usually I'd say if it's a pretty solid idea, you can usually get it into, and during the development process, and a lot of times you do get paid by the potential buyer to go through development. And it's in that development phase where you really take something that is maybe a mini Bible and you expand it into a full Bible. So you really look at what the characters are. Maybe as a buyer, you ask for art, because a lot of times you may not have artwork. You may just have, and I just want to say something to that effect, is that it's expensive to try and get artwork done for an animated project. Sometimes you can just put a mood board together of things that kind of resemble it and what you're thinking, so that when you do go into development, Hopefully you'll get into development. You can then hire artists to really like flesh it out and make it real.
But is it an advantage to have very good art to put in the Bible, the mini Bible, the micro Bible, so that
Well, definitely, it's an advantage, but it is expensive. So I would say that if you've got a really solid pitch and a really solid mood board, meaning you've pulled from things that inspire you and what you're thinking, if the idea is really strong, a lot of times executives will be able to say, okay, yeah, I can see this, but I want to go further with it. And then they will, hopefully give you development money so that you can hire a proper artist to take it to the next step.
Oh, okay.
So when you say expensive, so that people can, have a clear view of what you're trying to share. How much money are you talking about when you talk about hire artists to draw and make the texturing and all that for the Bible?
Well, it's funny because I'm gonna be slightly sarcastic, and I don't mean to be, but I'm gonna say how long is a piece of string, because it really depends. Is it CG characters? Is it 2D characters? Is it line characters? Is it stop motion characters? So it really depends. But I will say that if you're trying to pitch something and you do something on the cheap, and you do like a clip, have somebody do a clip art that doesn't feel like it's really realized and it's not really your vision. I think it's a mistake to do that. I think it's better to pull from things that really inspire you to say, this is what I want it to be. And once I get development money, I want to, find the right artist to make it feel this rich and this compelling. And it really depends. I'm talking about an independent producer who doesn't maybe have deep pockets. If you're somebody like a Mattel or something like a major toy company, and you have an infrastructure and you have animators on board in-house, and you're pitching to a broadcaster or a streaming service, absolutely, you can afford to do something that feels really polished and nuanced. But if you're somebody that is, an independent producer, you have a great idea, but you don't have deep pockets, I don't advise, going broke, putting together something that is really, expensive, because if the pitch isn't there, it's not there. I've seen many pitches that are hardcover, glossy, super complicated animation, and it's just not the right idea. And so whether or not they sold it to other people, I don't know, but I would have been able to tell them that it wasn't right based on just, what the pitch was, what the bones of the pitch, what it was. Think of it like when you go into a restaurant and you see a menu, you have a pretty good idea, if it's a good menu, the description of the food, and you have a pretty good idea of like, I'm going to try that, pork loin with whatever based on the description of it. I'm going to give it a try. Now, whether or not you want to come back and you're going to give it a good review, and what it depends on how it's actually, pulled together. You get a really strong idea if you're a well-trained executive, and there's brilliant executives out there. You get a really good sense off the top of like, okay, I get what this is going to be. I get the team. The team's really important, who you want to put together, who you want to have like help make this a reality. But you get a really great sense. And especially if you see some visuals, you get an aesthetic sense of like, oh, I get what Victor's taste is. Victor really likes quirky animation with a sense of da. So I'm gonna invest in Victor. I'm gonna give him the money. And so a lot of them are looking for IP, intellectual property, that is based on something that they know, so that there's less of a risk for them. So for instance, and I think it's going to be even more so with the success of Barbie, because it's like it already had a built-in audience. Everyone kind of knew what Barbie was. They took a genius turn with it and they made it into a brilliant movie. But I think that it was helpful. I know that I worked a little bit on the the next wave of Barney, and that's coming out next. So I think Mattel is like, oh, well, Barney was a success in the past, and everyone knows who Barney is and what the character is. And so we're going to evolve Barbie and take it to the next level. But it certainly made it easier for them to sell. When I was at Cartoonito and Warner Brothers, I wasn't the one that brought it on board, but my boss did, because I think that she saw, oh yeah, I mean, this is kind of a no-brainer, because we know that Barney is a lovable character, and we know that the stories are going to be, really, we know exactly who that's for, and we know how it succeeded. So really the major lifting was like how to evolve it without losing the essence of who Barney was, because it's now animated, it's not live action. So how do we make sure that the animated version of Barney really feels like Barney, and how do we tell stories that feel like they haven't been told before, but it fits in with the character of Barney?
Do you know other festivals, maybe in Canada, or other festivals for kids that the audience can also investigate to and go to?
I mean, in Canada, there's a really wonderful Ottawa has a really wonderful animation festival. In Ottawa is a province within Canada. And that is a great, I think, animation festival. There's a television festival in Banff every year that's really great. It's not just kids, but there is a big kids component to it. And those are the two that just jump out at me. But honestly, I think all you really have to do is go online and do some research and just ask for, top kids conferences, top kids animation festivals, top kids organizations. And it really varies. I mean, there's a massive kids component, kids storytelling organizations, many organizations in the UK that support the kids industry. They have various festivals that they throw as well for both animation, live action, combination of both. So I think sometimes it's just a little bit of digging into like sort of, doing some, but I just think Kids Screen is one of the best overall, because it does cover children's media from many different, as a whole. Exactly.
What about IP protection, Lisa? Do you recommend that for anyone that wants to pitch that?
Oh yeah,
their
that's
idea?
A good question.
It is a great question. I think that's why a lot of the bigger organizations, like the bigger, streaming services, and they don't like to take unsolicited pitches. They want it to come through either a manager or an agent, because then they know that it's protected on both sides. There were many, many times that I would hear a pitch and I would have to stop someone and say, I have to tell you, I've heard this pitch before. It's in development. I just need to be straight up right now. I know it seems crazy, but sometimes that does happen. Sometimes there is a dinosaur idea that comes to me and I'm like, I just heard that pitch, and there's no duplicity there. It's just, it's not anyone.
It happened in two places at the same time. That's
it happens at two places at the same time. Exactly. And it's uncanny, because sometimes it's like to the T. So I always usually stop and say, I've already, it's just so that they don't think, oh, I pitched it to her, now it's on the air. I'll let people know right away, we actually have something in development that's similar to this. And I think most executives would do that. I do think at the very least, if you don't have a manager or an agent, and you want to take your idea out there, it's good to register it. And I think every country works in a different way, but you can just literally Google how to register your intellectual property, and you'll find out the way to do that. Your voice is very unique to anyone else's voice. And the way that you're going to tell that story is going to be so different than the way someone else is going to tell that story. And that's not to say that there aren't sometimes out there shady people who say, oh, gee, a singing dinosaur, that's a great idea. Okay, I'm not going to buy your I'm not going to buy your idea, but I'm going to go off and make my own singing dinosaur show, or I'm going to pitch it internally as though it's my own. I guess there are some people in out there that would do that, but I think most people who are at the level of that are going to buy shows have, integrity, and wouldn't do that. But
Great, Lisa. We haven't heard any services that you provide. Are you active as a consultancy?
Yeah. So yes, absolutely. So I my last corporate job was the end of last year, and it was a merger happened between Discovery and Warner Brothers, and so that wrapped up my 2 years there. But I was a creative consultant, and so I continue to be a creative consultant. I think my specialty is definitely preschool, even though I have done older kids. And I had just finished. I did a series with Cartoon Saloon in Ireland, in terms of them bringing me in and looking at scripts and Bibles and helping to make it more sort of, hopefully saleable to America, doing the best I can. Other times I'll come in and there'll be a seed of an idea and somebody wants to put together a pitch. And so I really help them by asking a lot of questions and working with them. And I'm a writer, so I'll kind of help them develop their pitch into something that is a mini Bible. And right now I'm working on a really fantastic series called Future Chicken, which is what's called a metaverse, which means it is a YouTube series. It's a Roblox game. It's podcasts, and it's all based on the concept of a chicken, an animated chicken from the year 2050, who, with a group of friends that live on this bio barn, are coming at you from 2050 to tell you all the amazing things that are happening in the future because of all the steps that you made today to take care of the environment. So it's a very planet positive project, which I'm super proud to be helping out on. So I'm doing research for them. I'm doing writing for them, and helping them to organize some of the kids that they're going to be interviewing that are doing awesome things for the planet. So yes, I am. I'm absolutely happy to help anyone, especially from other countries that want to figure out, like, how do I make this seed of an idea into an actual pitch?
Right.
Great. So that's a good piece of information for everybody, Stephanie. I think Lisa
Totally.
will have to share her information if she agrees.
Absolutely.
So that anyone that has the needs of a page, a Bible, or a project can reach Lisa. So Lisa, we're getting to the end of the podcast. It's been an honor. We are very pleased that you were with us. You have a lot of information. It seems like those 3 decades packed into 53 minutes is not enough. Maybe we can do that in the near future. So why don't you tell us and share with us final thoughts for all those professionals and people that have those amazing ideas or would like to, go the next step in this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I said at the beginning, I'm going to close with at the end, is that, dreams happen for a reason. There's a reason why you have that seed of the idea inside of you. And I do think that, it's very easy sometimes to look outside yourself and think, oh, I'm in this small town, or I'm in this, it's just me and a computer, or me and a laptop, or me and a typewriter. Who am I to ... Just fight those negative thoughts, because I think that those dreams are in you for a reason, and those stories are in you for a reason, and just getting them out on the page is like an amazing journey that is, I think, something that's rich in itself. And then I do believe that, you work hard enough, research, watch shows. The internet's an amazing thing. And I know there's conflicting ideas about AI, but there's also some good things about AI in terms of researching and finding out what's out there, what's happening. And if you're working, if your content is for kids, really get to know kids, like whether it's, whether it's watching what's popular for them, or, if you have, friends or kids of your own or whatever, watch how they behave, read about the curriculum and what a 2 to 3-year-old watches versus a 7 to 9-year-old, what they're able to kind of comprehend. Get to know your audience always, and never, never, never give up on your dreams.